Welcome to Footy Talks, presented by Benjamin Moore. Great to have you with us. Luke, Stephen and KJ with you as always. Benjamin Moore stores are now open, and you can also go to their website for inspiration as well. Lots of ideas, colours, DIY projects, and much more. As always, thanks to Benjamin Moore for being part of the Footy Talk show. A little later on today, we'll be joined by Andy May, who works for BT Sport based in England. He is actually in San Sebastian at the moment, where he's been covering the UEFA Women's Champions League competition that's been going on. He was in Lisbon last week for the Men's Champions League as well. We'll talk Messi, we'll talk Davies, some of the games that have been played as well. We were to have Liam Fraser join us on the show, but he's not going to be able to make it today. TFC postponing all media availability today. It's something that New York City and New York Red Bulls have done as well today, and I believe DC United, in light of what happened in Major League Soccer and the NBA last night, with those games being postponed as players decided to take a stance. It's something that Major League Soccer has led the way on ever since what happened with George Floyd back in the spring. And KJ, Stephen, we saw that incredibly powerful statement made at the start of the MLS's back tournament, with the players standing on the pitch for that length of time just before the game started, players from all of the teams uniting in that really powerful statement. We've seen Thierry Henry kneel for the first 8 minutes 46 of the Montreal Impact game. Major League Soccer has been at the forefront of this. Last night when we heard that these games were being postponed, I was watching on TSN2 what was supposed to be the start of the Atlanta and Inter Miami game. And for a while, they weren't sure what was happening. The players were talking to each other. They came out. They had a photograph together to show they were united. The referees were in the middle of that as well. And as he signed off, Kev Egan, who's a really good friend of ours, who's a great broadcaster, he just said, "Tonight, I am so proud of Major League Soccer." And I think all of us would have those sentiments as we go into this show today. Proud of what these players have stood for over the last 24 hours, over the last few months. Disappointed, and that's not a strong enough word, in the fact they have to still do this, KJ.
Yeah, it is obviously with a heavy heart that, we speak today, because, I can't speak for you two, but I know knowing you two very well, I'm sure your emotions are much similar to mine, and there's a lot of different emotions, and, sometimes we have to try and express them with verbally with the words that, and I can only say the same and echo some of your thoughts, Luke, in terms of how proud I am, not just of Major League Soccer, but of the athletes last night in a mixture of sports, led once again by, has to be said, the progressive nature of the NBA, again at the forefront of all this, and what a wonderful league that is to stand up for what is right, and to continue to give other people strength that I think Major League Soccer would admit, and many of those players would admit, that maybe they didn't have the strength to try and go through with what they had done if it wasn't for the Milwaukee Bucks and the National Basketball Association. And as you alluded to, there's been a lot of statements, there's been a lot of shirts worn. Those statements need to lead to actions to make a stand. And, the statements have been good that we've got to this point, but it was time to make a unified statement by not taking the pitch, not taking the court, and respect their wishes and thoughts, and a time to listen hard, and with a very heavy heart and tears in my eyes, watching and listening to these people with the pain that they have to go through to get to this level. And whatever is next is next. I would say that short-term reactions without thinking long-term like this are fine. There's a lot of people asking, what is the long-term plan? What is the long haul? It's okay to not necessarily know that right now. These things are important to take a stand and to react, to believe in what you do right, Stephen. And I think the final thing I would say initially is that Major League Soccer, NBA, Major League Baseball, it doesn't matter what your sport that you follow, you have to, I think at some point, want that sport to stand up for what you believe is right, and your morals and values of what you think is right as a human being. And if they don't do that, then sometimes I think questions will be asked, and we might get into some of that today where some people haven't done the right thing. But I think you need those leagues that we all like or what you follow to do the right thing, to mirror what you think you should be doing in life. And if they don't do that, then you have to make a decision otherwise, to maybe not follow that league for certain reasons.
Yeah, I completely agree with a lot of things that you said, KJ. A difficult a difficult period in general, but a difficult, really, really difficult 24 hours for me. I feel very, very emotional about some of the things I've watched, some of the things that I've read, things that I don't know if the word's ignorant, but, didn't realise had such an effect on people that I respect, that I admire within my sport, within other sports. I see guys like Chris Webber, Robert Horry, Doc Rivers chatting about sitting their own kids down at 13 and 14 years old, similar age to my kids, and I know you guys are a little bit younger, but I just can't even imagine that. I can't even contemplate and sitting my boy down and telling him to be careful if the police stop him in his car when he's 16, 17, or, if he's out late at night. And I just can't imagine that, because I'm lucky. I'm a white man. I'm a privileged white man. And so when I watch these fellas, like I said, that I respect, and see the way that they speak about this, and the bravery that the Bucks showed to not take that court, the bravery, guys, like, we are programmed as athletes to just get on with it. You're going through a divorce, just get on with it. You've got alcohol problems, get on with it. You're a gambling addict, just get on with it. Put it to the side, brush it to the back of your mind, and go and play. That's how we're taught from a very early age. And so the bravery to say, no, we ain't getting on with this. This is far too serious. This is bigger than sport. This is bigger than money. This is bigger than anything right now. We must show people how to lead. We, the athletes, are going to show the politicians, the decision makers, how to lead. Isn't that incredible? That it's athletes that are leading the way. Now, who's going to step up? Who's going to step up from government here in Canada, in the UK, anywhere, in the US? We know what a shambles that place is with the leadership that's there. This is accumulation and lack of leadership from people in distinguished positions who are just disgusting. They're just disgusting people. I'm sorry. Step up. Do something about it. Follow these athletes, the ones that can actually help create change. It's going to take some time, guys. I know it's not going to be 1 day, 1 week, 1 year, but it started and we can't go back. We've got to follow these people. We've got to support them. We've got to do everything we can from our small, medium or large platforms to make a difference here. And if it means not playing games for a weekend, a year, I don't care what it takes. The time is now for all of us to do something about it. And I'm glad we've got this platform. I know we all think alike because we're great friends and we talk out with when we're on air, and we all think the same way. And I think that this is a great time to do something about it and stand for something more than just your sport or your privileged position.
Very aware that the three of us were not involved in any of this in terms of the decisions that were being taken yesterday, what Major League Soccer's players had to go through, the NBA players. So I wanted to make sure that we just heard their side of the story in terms of what was going through their mind last night. Mark-Anthony Kaye is someone you know, KJ, very well, having spoken to him on a number of occasions. We all know him, but you've had deep conversations with him regarding this situation when you did it with the TSN.ca sit down with Jeremy Abobasi and Richie Larea as well. Producer Kev has the interview Mark-Anthony Kaye did last night. So let's just hear from Mark-Anthony Kaye, the Canadian international, part of LAFC. He was at Rio Tinto last night for that game against Real Salt Lake. Obviously, that was one of the games that was postponed. Kev, if you can just roll Mark-Anthony Kaye, we'll hear from him what he had to say last night.
Yeah, so obviously we're here in Salt Lake right now. We've had discussions earlier within the team about how we wanted to make a stance on showing our solidarity with the NBA teams that have decided to opt out of playing in their playoff games. You know, we realized that it was a great opportunity to, really make some noise about an ongoing situation that no matter how much the media covers it, it never goes away. And it's a real problem. And I think that this is a good opportunity to continue the conversation. And yeah, obviously sports are important to a lot of people, and they look to us to give them the right message. So we're using our power right now, our voices right now, by saying we're not going to play because it's unacceptable what's going on in the world, especially here in the US. It's over and over, same things are happening, and there's no real justice being given to us. So for me, as a black player, I'm not okay with knowing that, other black people are just getting killed. Nonetheless, other people in general, we are all humans. Life is very valuable, and it doesn't seem like that's the case when it comes to certain races and ethnicities within this country. So I'm very proud of my teammates. I'm proud of RSL also for making a stance and saying we're not going to play. It's a risky thing to do, but I think it's a powerful move, and I'm just glad that we're taking the opportunity to do it.
That's Mark Anthony Kay. It would be great at some point to be able to get Mark Anthony Kay on the show if we can line it up in the next few weeks as well. A Canadian kid who has experienced so much, standing up there, having that opportunity, Stephen, you've captained clubs, you've been in a locker room. He's not one of the most experienced players in that locker room, but he has a voice. And for the last months, he has been using that voice in a very strong way. So impressive listening to him speak like that last night in the midst of what presumably was chaos in terms of everything that the MLS players and the other the athletes were going through as these games were getting cancelled and talks were taking place.
Yeah, great leadership from Mark. I think that has to be said. The full day you could see from his tweets and the way that he was standing up to this was very impressive. And I'm really proud of him because, Mark's a guy that, as you guys know, I've spent time with the Canadian national team recently, but he came into my dressing room. I was the captain of the team at Toronto FC when Mark became, a professional when he first started training with us. So to see the young man that he's becoming, the way that he's willing to, say enough is enough, go against the norm and speak up and be proud and vocal about that, I think makes me very proud. I think he's a lad that will speak his mind, and I think everyone that is in that position. I heard, for example, in the same game, I had Neda Manoa, who had obviously played in England with Manchester City and has been about a bit, who spoke tremendously well, a little bit different from Mark, different personality, but really eloquent in the way that he passed over his message and the way that these guys, whether you were wearing the shirt of Salt Lake or LAFC or anybody else, got together and mobilised so quickly, KJ, as a group, makes me very proud as an ex-player in soccer, in MLS. The way they did that was so impressive, wasn't it?
It really is, and if there's a few positives to come out of this, is that, the young people in this world, and we're all relatively young, but I understand that the next generation behind us, that I really feel very powerfully strong about this, that I think the world is in good hands. And I think that what Major League Soccer is showing right now, that these young, tremendous young men, I know that other leagues have done the same, but these tremendous young athletes are standing up for what's right, to bring change and shine a light on what's wrong, and not to be afraid of that, and not to stand behind leagues or rich white owners and fear what they have to say and toe a company line. Instead, it's about what they believe is right, and to use their platform to say what's right and to do what's right, and not play a game when the league had initially put out a request saying they stand with them, but not saying the games are cancelled. And the players really, for what we're led to believe, really igniting that push for making sure that they weren't playing the games last night. And the importance of hearing from Mark Anthony Kay and Neda Manoa is vital. And I've spoken with Mark a few times. Mark is a very gifted football player, but he's also very gifted in terms of how he can eloquently put his words out there. There are black athletes and black players in MLS that I've spoke to that feel very similar to Mark, but feel very vulnerable in front of a microphone and are not quite sure how to express themselves in that way. And that's okay. Not everybody is gifted that way, but it is important that those that are express those words so they can stand for those people and express the feeling of everybody. And that is why it is important that the Black, Lives Change matter, the whole thing there, the Coalition for Change, that they have a voice, that they can lean on these people that can express what they need to express going forward. And I was very proud of Mark, very proud of the players to really push this movement forward.
And I think it also speaks to the unity of Major League Soccer's players in the MLSPA right now, Stevie. Obviously, they've been through an awful lot in terms of CBA negotiations, all that stuff that was going on around whether the bubble would take place or not. And when we talk to players from teams across the league, they were talking now about how more than ever, these players are united as a group. And that wasn't always the case, Stephen. And maybe from when you were there as part of the union, things have changed a lot in terms of it's not now just different sections of players, but there is a unity and a determination within this group of players, young and old, whatever their backgrounds, that they are going to use their voice and use their platform to change, and not only to change things within the league that they want to change, but to try and influence or impact what they can outside the game as well. And that just shows you how far this league and this group of players has come in even the last 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, and it's the sort of mobilisation of the group, the coalition that KJ mentioned, and the discussions between teams and squads now that I am so proud of, I guess, Luke, because I think back to 2015 in the CBA, and of course we never had any of this Black Lives Matter stuff and that. It wasn't rearing its ugly head at that time. But even just to get to an agreement on a collective bargaining agreement then was really difficult between the teams. I was a representative for Toronto FC, and eventually we got down to DC to kind of get into the last few hours of the agreement, and there was a lot of kind of battles on different fronts from different teams, and I think that 5 years later in 2020 we're at such a stage where, you know, thanks to Justin Morrow, Jeremy Abobisi, Richie Laryea, Mark Anthony Kay, Nether Manoa, we can go on and on. These guys are mobilising as a group. They're backed by Michael Bradley's and influential people. It doesn't matter what colour of skin you are, where you come from, where you played, what your history is. These guys are a group now. You know, the MLSPA are right behind them. They're forcing things with their owners. They're forcing things with their league in terms of what's going to happen. They're saying, we make this league, we play in this league, we are going to dictate certain things that are acceptable for us and not acceptable for us, KJ. And I think that's remarkable. I really do. And the reason that, you know, I bring up 15 is that this has happened in 5 years, you know. Yeah. There's the growth of this league in terms of on the field that we always go on about, and how successful MLS is becoming, and we talk about salary caps and players coming and the football getting better, but the growth of the league is also having personalities and people who are willing to say enough is enough. And that's what I am most proud about 5 years later for the CBA that I was involved in this year, 2020.
Completely agree.
And when you say enough is enough, there are still some people, unfortunately, who don't think that. And it just goes to show the uphill struggle that there is when you see the comments today from the Real Salt Lake owner, Deloy Hansen, on a local radio station, saying on the game not happening last night, he said, the disrespect was profound to me personally. And he went on to say it's taken a lot of wind out of how much he wants to invest in the team. A lot of Major League Soccer players have come out and said how disgusting that statement is. Josie Altidore of TFC saying he needs to sell the team then. I'm involved in a group that's ready to purchase it. Time for change. Imagine, Stevie, being a Real Salt Lake player who took that stand last night and hearing from your owner today like that.
It's disgusting. It's the only word that I can say, Luke. It is despicable, you know, that you've got an owner saying that. And this is what we're up against, guys. Like, it's going to take more than one discussion, 10 discussions. It's going to take thousands, millions of discussions. It's systemic. It's in people from when they were born, that came from their parents, that is going to take longer than any of us can imagine to really create the real change that we need, so that people think differently, so that kids are not corrupted by their parents, by the way their parents thought, by hundreds of years of abuse and slavery and the history that we can all go through. None of us I'm not sitting here pretending that I'm a historian, guys, that I know all these details. I'm learning along the way. What I do know is that I looked at a player on the personality of the guy and the qualities that he had as a player, and I never saw the colour of his skin. I never cared any way, you know, where he was born, where he came from. I was his captain or his teammate, and I did my best to allow his voice to be heard within my changing room that I controlled. And thankfully, that's the way that I was brought up. But millions of us all around the world, certainly here in North America, have not been brought up like that. And we've got owners saying things like that. Let's not accept it. Let's not worry about one little bit about one as a Josie Altidore, magnificent from Josie. He's got the personality and the profile to do it. But let's everybody back onto that. Let's get people like that out of the league. Let's make sure that they don't have any say in what goes on within soccer in North America, because it's disgusting. And we're not going to get any change because people coming in the stand who have a similar mindset to him, KJ, will go down the same road as him and think that's okay because the owner of their football club has said it. It's not okay, and it shouldn't be allowed, and none of us should stand for it.
No, it's absolutely deplorable. But it's very, very difficult to educate ignorance. And, this whole thing about this movement, I'm sure, as a privileged white man, I can only speak for what I think, but I'm sure those on the end of it who are suffering on a daily basis would say that their long-term goal is not to make sure that everybody thinks the same way, because it's going to be really, really difficult. But in many ways, that guy, who I'm not even going to mention his name because he's a disgrace, that, I'm almost pleased that he said it, because everything that's going on right now is the reason why they have to happen, because of people like him. And now, get out the league. Okay, now Major League Soccer stands for something that you don't need to be involved in anymore. We don't want to talk about you ever again. Okay, so now Don Garber and his ownership group can do whatever it takes to stand up to him and say, goodbye, you don't belong here. You don't have the same morals and values. We're working forward that we believe in what it's right to represent our league, our sport, and our players. So that's the next step. Don't want anything to do with him anymore. Go. It's time to soften hearts and look at the people within the league and what they stand for as people. And if you're not standing for what everybody else believes is the right thing, goodbye. Don't want to talk about you anymore. Disgusting, disgraceful, everything you want to say. No part of the league. Good riddance. That's what I would say.
I would say the only thing we can do is educate and try and help educate ourselves and others around us, because we haven't experienced what a lot of people right now are going through because of our position. Last night, I spent probably from, it was around about 3:30, 4 o'clock when all this was going down, watching what was happening with the NBA, with my 9-year-old son, Sam Mitchell, the former Raptor head coach, talking extremely powerfully about what he had to go through. And my 9-year-old son, incredulous that this is happening and this has to happen because of the way the world is. But we have to educate our kids. We have to tell them that this is a problem that needs fixing, even if it's something that they obviously have never experienced themselves and cannot understand that people would act to other people in this sort of a way. And like you said, KJ, there's a very powerful younger generation coming through now who are not living in the dark ages and are trying to do whatever they can to pull this world into a better place. And I think that was, for me, why it was so important that those games were off last night, because instead of sitting watching into Miami against Atlanta, we were sitting as a family watching what was being said on these sports television stations about more than sports, about everything else that is going on in the world and why it's so important. And at the end of the night, he came and he'd drawn a poster that just said Black Lives Matter. And that just for me was like, that was one of the big reasons why it was so important, not just for the attention that Major League Soccer players stepped away last night, but to allow people within families to have a discussion. And Kelly Hrudey said the same thing about the NHL, right? When he spoke powerfully about the fact that he would rather be sitting having this discussion with his family than sitting talking about hockey. And that gave us an opportunity as a family to talk about that last night. So that's, from my perspective, one of the things that hits home in terms of why it was important. And it's a very small reason, very small part of what it was all about. But it did do what it was supposed to in terms of stopping people, Stevie, talking about corner kicks, penalties, video assistant referee, and instead fully focused on the conversation of what is most important right now.
Yeah, the discussions in every living room, wasn't it? Wherever you were in the country, because, you know, the millions of people sitting down to watch an NBA playoff game or an MLS match find that there's dead air, and guys like us are trying to give their opinions. Like we said, some of them are absolutely amazing. The bravery, the honesty, the emotion that these fellas showed. But you know, we protect our kids, don't we? Of course, we love our kids more than anything. We do anything for them. And I find myself, you know, you guys know my Robbie, my youngest son, who is quite an anxious kid, and he's always worried about things. And, you know, it's easy to kind of protect him. And last night we were chatting, and he said, "But what's going to happen, Dad? You know, is there going to be trouble in the streets? Is it going to be here in Toronto?" And normally my response to that, KJ, would be, "No, it'll be fine, son. It'll be somewhere else," you know? And I think that's such an easy thing to say, to protect the people that we love. But last night I said, "I don't know, son. Whatever needs to happen is going to happen. And it might be on the streets of Toronto. And I'm not advocating violence on the streets or violent protests or anything like that. I'm just saying what needs to happen needs to happen. And our kids need to understand that we're not going back, we're not going to accept, we're not going to like package this up and talk about something that happened in the crazy year of 2020. We're going to keep going forward with this. We're going to keep pushing and pushing until the decision makers make decisions to help advocate change. And if that means that people need to go in the streets, or that means that my son sleeps a little bit uneasy at night because he's worried about what's going to happen in his city, then so be it. I think we're at that stage, guys. I think we all have to be brutally honest with our kids, even when it brings fear, because there's kids unlike ours that have different skin colour who are scared. They're scared from the people that protect them. Law enforcement, they're worried about going into the streets. They're in neighbourhoods where everyone looks like them and they have no protection. They don't have anybody to look after them. So I think that it's a time that we all should be a little bit fearful, and we should push forward, support each other to try and get towards this change.
Yeah, and finally on that point for me is, you know, what I'll say before is that one thing I wrote one time in a piece, I can't remember what I was writing about right now, was that they always say never meet your heroes, and my answer to that was always be pick better heroes, you know. And, you know, it's like, for me is that, you know, it doesn't matter whether you're 5, 15, 45, you've got a sporting heroes, you know, and these guys, you enjoy what they do and what they stand up for on a court or on a field or on a racetrack. But what we've now allowed ourselves in 2020 to do is to find out a little bit more about these people and what they stand up for by getting on a camera phone or getting on a social media account. And you can learn a little bit more about what they believe in and stand for. And, you know, they're no longer just a poster on a wall of a guy putting a ball in a hoop. You know, they're representing things that you think that should be right in the world. And that's the thing with kids. You know, kids look at these guys as much as adults do as icons of what they stand for. And this just gives those an opportunity for those kids to look at these players and go, yeah, these guys are the ones I want to be behind. These guys for the rest of my life, I know that when they're performing at their best on the sporting environment, there's so much to enjoy about them and be enthralled by them. But when they're away from that, you know, you look at someone as incredible as LeBron James, you know, how can anybody look at that guy and go, I don't like that guy? You know what I mean? Like everything he does, everything he says, and what he stands for, it's like, yeah, those are the guys that you want to have posters on the wall for, because they have a powerful message. And as I said, sports can have a wonderful, wonderful vehicle for everybody of every age to stand up for what's right in the world and try and soften everybody's hearts.
We've only just scratched the surface there in about 30 minutes of chat about this situation, but very important that we bring it to the fore in the show today and discuss it. Anyone joining us a little late, Liam Fraser isn't coming on the show today from Toronto FC, TFC right now, just taking the time without media availability to reflect and see what happens next in terms of moving forward with everything that happened in Major League Soccer last night. So we'll get Liam on the show in the future. Really big week in the soccer world with games that did actually play for Canada as well, of course, with Alphonso Davies getting to the Champions League final. The Lionel Messi story just continues to swirl. Where is he going to end up after saying he wants to leave Barcelona? A man with a lot of the answers is our colleague Andy May, who works for BT Sport in the UK. Andy, you might recognize him from when TSN, we used to do the Premier League shows, and Andy would be on a lot of the shows with us. At Premier League, Champions League, he basically spends his time flying sideways around Europe for BT Sports.
Is it working?
Hey,
played on.
Turn it around, mate.
I thought I was being clever there.
There we go.
go.
Andy with us from San Sebastian in Spain right now, where Canada prepared for the Women's World Cup last year. You've had quite a week. We talk about, like, when we used to do the Champions League shows, you flew more miles than anybody else in Europe, going from stadium to stadium to, like, you do 2 Champions League games and a Europa League game in the space of 3 days in different countries. And last week in Lisbon for the Champions League, this week in San Sebastian. Let's start with what the talk is there at the moment. Just before we get into Lionel Messi, has what happened in the NBA and with Major League Soccer and a couple of MLB teams not playing yesterday, has that resonated at all in Europe?
Yeah, definitely. And I think, from my personal perspective, I think this is a real moment. This is not about a few token T-shirts this time. I think we're genuinely seeing change, and we're not just seeing change within sport. What's obviously happened in the last few days in North America, I think there will definitely give players in Europe the courage and the feeling that it is absolutely right to walk off the field if there is racist abuse. Because I've always said, how on earth can you carry on playing games when you have just even one idiot, but let alone 10 to 20 to even 100 screaming obscenities of that nature towards human beings on the pitch and then carry on? So I think that's great, because now we will still get a bit of that. Unfortunately, there are still dinosaurs in our part of the world, just like in North America. So now I think that players will have almost the acceptance, if they ever needed it, to just walk off the field. So that's great. But also there's other things as well. I think in terms of just society generally, curriculums in schools in England and other parts of the UK are being updated now to reflect the slave era, for example, which, I mean, I'm going back probably 2 decades, I'm getting on a bit now. When I was at school, that wasn't touched, but that is going to be touched now. And you look at commentators and broadcasters as well. Before we start our new European season, we are having a special course on subconscious bias and language that, okay, we might not say because we want to be racist, because of course we don't want to be, but might be offensive to some people without us realizing it. So there's a phrase, for example, I didn't even know about until I had a chat with a colleague earlier today. Sold down the river, which you might say when somebody megs you or whatever, that has quite harmful references to the slave trade era. And I had no idea about that. So I think education's key, and I think we're seeing real change, and it's great.
Yeah, you're right. Absolutely, education. And that's something we talked about in the opening half an hour of the show. Thanks for that, Andy. So where you are right now is in Spain, which is, I'm sure, where a lot of talk is going on right now in all the media and the newspapers about Lionel Messi. Where's he going to end up is the question that you can answer for us.
I will try. I'm not going to sit on the fence deliberately, but I'm still 50-50. I think it's partly a power play in that if the president leaves, then I think there's every chance Messi could stay. And don't forget, the election actually for Barcelona's president is actually only in March next year. So, I mean, part of you thinks, why doesn't Leo Messi just stick around himself? He's culpable as well for this situation. But if that doesn't happen, and I think that's a possibility, but I think the bigger possibility and the only possibility in terms of a move is Manchester City. And that's not really to do with money, because PSG and Inter and Man United and probably Chelsea as well, even with all their signings at the moment, they could afford him. But I think City has Chiqui, it has Pep, and it has the other quality around him. He's got Aguero, he's got Sterling, Fernandinho's still rolling back the years. He's got those players that can allow him to still do what he wants, aside from the cash, because that doesn't matter really to him. And that's win titles, win the Champions League again. And look, Ronaldo's won the Champions League with more than one different club. Messi kind of needs to do the same, doesn't he?
I'm sure I keep an eye on that stat, but obviously away from the powerful change with racial injustice and away from COVID, this is probably the biggest story that's hit sport for some time, Andy. even around the world. You know, we're talking about it on SportsCenter here. It's a massive story in North America. It's a massive story everywhere that arguably the most talented player in the game and Barcelona's greatest player ever is going to leave. What's it been like there? I'm sure, I don't know how your Spanish is when you switch the TV on at night and you're listening to the news, but I'm sure there's a lot of Lionel Messi shows and a lot of coverage in the papers.
Yeah, it's everywhere. So I had a quick drink after the match last night, after the second semi-final in the Women's Champions League. That took place actually in the next city from San Sebastian, Bilbao. So at the amazing San Mamés, and for me, is actually the best stadium in Spain. It's like an Emirates, but updated and just even posher. Although the pitch wasn't great last night, but I went to a really sort of down-to-earth barrio bar. So barrio is like community, just nothing spectacular, basically. A really cheap, proper Club de Athletic Bilbao bar.
Brilliant.
And that's all they were talking about. They were talking about Lionel Messi and where he's going to go. And I actually saved this as well from earlier in the week. So that basically means total war. Right. It's incredible, isn't it? War. I mean, this man is Barcelona and Barcelona is Lionel Messi. And they're talking about a war. And this is the paper sport that is Barcelona's paper, really. It's like Marca's Real Madrid equivalent. So I find it astonishing that we've got to this point, really. Obviously, there needs to be an outcome now, and there will be an outcome. Either Messi will leave or the president will leave early. But regardless of which one of those two things happens, it's an absolute mess, and it should never have happened because he's much bigger a legend than Ronaldo at Real Madrid because he was famously booed. I just, you saw the fans at the Camp Nou last night. They were protesting, and obviously, protests about real stuff are much more important. Given, I've been listening to you guys, and you've made some great points in the first half an hour, so I'll definitely say that. But the fans were there protesting last night, and it just feels like quite a sad moment, really, that he's going to leave potentially in this manner, the legend of Barcelona.
Yeah, I agree, Andy, the legend of Barcelona, and you said this man is Barcelona, but maybe I'm going to bring up a bit of a controversial point here, or play devil's advocate. We always used to say a saying in football, no man is bigger than the team, right? And so he's Lionel Messi, he's, in my opinion, the greatest player of all time. But this is an aging Messi. This is a guy who doesn't press, doesn't defend. He's playing with a couple other fellas who don't do the same. And this is Barcelona. And so the question I'm going to ask you, was this a knee-jerk reaction from the 8-2 defeat? Has this been coming? Is this about the president? Or is this about Barcelona and particularly Ronald Koeman, the new coach, saying things are going to be a little bit different for you, Lionel? Are you willing to accept that? And he's kind of threw the toys at the pram a little bit. What's your opinion there? Because in the end, long live the king, the king dies and everything changes. Is it the time for Barcelona, or should they try and eke out another 3 or 4 years of Messi's career?
I think 2 more years would be nice. I think he could still do a great job for 2 more years. But in answer to your question, I don't think it's a knee-jerk reaction after the embarrassment against Bayern. I think this has been coming. It really has. And I think what's really annoyed Messi is that the club failed to get Neymar back. He really wanted the Brazilian to return. Obviously, we had the great MSN, their friends as well, really close friends. Messi lives on the outskirts of Barcelona, right next door to Suarez. They were great friends with Neymar, even though they all come from different countries in South America. You would think that obviously they should be massive rivals, but they were the best of friends, and they did it on the pitch. They were outstanding together. And I think really from that point onwards, and then with the managerial change, and obviously just not having success as well, I think all of those things have come together. And the fact that, Piqué as well, who's obviously very close to Messi, he's clearly not a huge fan of the current president. And we saw the other day Suarez as well putting the clap emoticon on Twitter after Puyol, the former captain of Barca, great centre-back, of course. He basically called out the club as well. So I think it's been brewing in the club in general, to be honest with you. And I see what you're saying about Messi in terms of, is it time for both parties to move on? You could say there's a fair point that Messi has perhaps become too powerful in many respects. No coach can come in and tell him what to do, but he is well, for me personally, the best player of all time. So that counts for something. And he's not a Ronaldinho Maradona type in that he goes off the rails. He's a professional. So if his going off the rails, so to speak, is having control, then that's clearly far better than being in a club at 2-3 a.m. on the morning of a game playing the drums.
It seems as if Manchester City is the preferred option in terms of what we're hearing in the media. There was also that story yesterday that it would be 3 years at Manchester City and then 3 years at New York City in Major League Soccer. So we'll wait and see. Or maybe Lionel Messi will just turn up in Columbus or Kansas City. Who knows? Maybe FC Dallas. Just spend 5 years in Frisco. I want to get on to the women's champions.
Not Salt Lake City.
Yeah, well, you never know. Probably not. Yeah. Well, I want to talk Women's Champions League in a moment because we had Ashley Lawrence playing yesterday. Jordan Heitema was on the bench for PSG. Kadisha Buchanan winning with Lyon and getting through to the final. But before that, you were in Lisbon, where there was also a lot of talk about a Canadian, Alphonso Davies. Obviously, we've known him. We've seen him grow up. We were there calling his first game when he came on as a pro back as a 15-year-old for the Whitecaps against Orlando at BC Place a few years ago. The rise has been remarkable, but it's something that soccer fans in this country have been watching very closely. When was the first point that you started to take notice of Alphonso Davies? And when you were in Lisbon last week with those Champions League semi-finals and the games that were played before that, how much talk was there about him and what's his standing right now in terms of the other players that people are talking about there?
So yeah, in the UK, we watch quite a bit of Bundesliga. It's well up there now. And in fact, actually, really, La Liga should be worried because obviously if they're going to lose Messi, I think the Bundesliga is in prime position to sort of become the second league in the UK with Dortmund particularly doing well with the young players. Sancho, Bellingham's just gone from Birmingham. So yeah, I think I was probably aware of him earlier on in the season, but he's really just shot up, hasn't he, in this latter part of the Champions League. And it's great to see somebody who's so humble still and clearly just absolutely loves football. You know, he lives for the game. He's not doing it because he's fast and talented and clearly intelligent enough to get to the level he's got to. He lives for it. You can see that in training. I watched a couple of the training sessions inside the stadiums in Lisbon before we did the interviews. I actually didn't end up speaking to him this time in this fortnight block. I chatted to Thomas Muller and Serge Gnabry instead, but
they're okay.
You can just see, yeah, no, of course. I mean, Gnabry's been sensational. Obviously, it didn't work out at West Brom and Arsenal, but yeah, it's just great to see how much he loves the game, and he's just going to get better and better. He's going to get stronger. He's going to get more intelligent, and Bayern clearly have 2 or 3 more seasons, even with some of the players that are not getting that much younger, where they can be still making semi-finals for sure.
Andy, let's talk about the Women's Champions League. Obviously, it's great that they are getting their own kind of headlines now. It's wonderful the fact that they've got established broadcasters like you there covering it on BT as well. How have you enjoyed the whole process and you know, ultimately giving these wonderful teams and brilliant athletes a platform must be extremely rewarding for everybody down there covering from your team?
Yeah, I've really enjoyed it. And I think actually, you know, there's been talk about the Men's Champions League becoming a permanent sort of festival of football from the quarterfinals onwards in one location. I'm not in favour of that. I do like the drama of the 2 legs at the 2 different stadiums in the quarters and the semis. We've had obviously some amazing games at that point over the years. But I think for the women's tournament, I think this is spot on to really grow the Women's Champions League. Having it in a 2-week block, having the chance to see not just Lyon and Wolfsburg, because they're the obvious ones, but actually Atletico Madrid and Barcelona were 2 teams I hadn't seen really apart from highlights before coming out here to Spain to do the competition. The football's great. Barcelona play like the men's team used to play before obviously it's all hit the fan at the moment. They were really good to watch and they were quite close really to causing a bit of an upset and getting to the final. So I think it's been fantastic, and I would hope that they continue at UEFA long term with this setup of having the quarters, the semis, and the final in one place.
Who's taking on the trophy then, Andy? Is it going to be Lyon again, or can Wolfsburg cause a bit of an upset?
I think Wolfsburg are going to do it, and in many ways, it might not be a huge upset because Lyon are missing. Obviously, Hagerberg's not played at any point in the tournament. Henry in midfield, and then you've now got Nikita Paris, the English international, who can't play either. She's suspended. Bit of a annoying first yellow card for her, really, last night. She was sort of asking the referee for protection because, you know, she was being targeted by PSG in this grudge match, and I think she said something a bit too far, and it was the first yellow card. And then the second, she can't really have any complaints about, to be quite frank. But it's a shame she'll be missing. So with those key players not available for the final on Sunday and Wolfsburg looking solid, I think we will see the Germans win. It won't be a convincing victory, but I think they'll win. And you know, there comes a point, doesn't there, where great teams like Barca, like Liverpool back in the day, and Manchester United under Sir Alex, they run their course a bit, and maybe it's not the worst thing in the world if we have a fresh winner, because it would be 5 in a row for Lyon, and that's it's great. Obviously, it shows that they're able to keep winning, but you like it mixed up a bit. I do anyway, personally.
Great to see Kadeisha Buchanan get back to another final, although I was rooting for PSG yesterday with Ashley Lawrence in there, Jordan Heitema on the bench. A close game for a long time, but in the end, PSG just couldn't quite get the job done. Sounds a little familiar. But you had the chance to catch up with Ashley Lawrence since you've been there. She's someone who is, when we did the rankings on TSN, ranked right now as the #1 Canadian women's national team player around the world. What was it like chatting with Ashley?
Great, yeah, and you know, she was not only really loving the fact that they're playing football again, because look, people like her and obviously Stevie, you'd have known back in the day, this is what you live for. It's your job as well. You want to just be out there on the pitch playing football. But she genuinely felt that this was the year for PSG because they've been so close against Lyon. This was the second 1-0 defeat against Lyon for Paris this season. And then the other 2 matches of the 4 they played, they were 0-0, and they lost both on penalty shootouts, these 2 finals in France, 4-3. So they're chipping away bit by bit. But, you know, Lyon have just got too much depth, I think. That's really the issue for PSG. But they'll get there. And it would be good, as I say, to have a different winner in France as well as on the Champions League stage too. But there was a bit of needle between the 2 teams yesterday. I was watching most of the second half, as close as I could be to the benches because I'm in a different zone, not part of either of the team setups. And yeah, they were, you know, trading a few words around the dugout. So there's definitely tension between the 2 rivals in France.
KJ knows all about that different zone from his time with the doing this pitchside interviews from about 20 rows back the other night at
Yeah, but it's not easy, is it?
No, it's different. I mean, at one point, Mark Dos Santos, the Whitecaps coach, actually started laughing during the first answer that we had to start again. He's like, I can't do this. I'm like, I'm talking to a guy 20 yards away. I'm like, all right, we'll have to go again here. But hey, we're in obviously the mercy of those who are a lot smarter than we are in terms of how they put the technology together. We're just thankful we can be in a stadium because we know so many other people would just love to be there. It's a privileged position, and we understand that.
Andy,
and
thanks.
I think,
Go on.
No, I was just going to say, I think to be fair to the Premier League and UEFA, and I'm not just saying this because I go to these stadiums, but I think they've handled it pretty well because it has been good to have back competitive sport. And, you know, I think 3 positive COVID tests in total across the men's and the women's tournaments, and only one of them was actually on site in the country. I think that's pretty good, to be fair. They've done really well.
It really is.
Well, I've never been before, but I understand San Sebastian does not suck. So enjoy yourself. Thanks for taking the time to be with us today inside instead of being outside on the beaches or whatever else you could be doing.
No, and Andy, he's probably ran down every street of San Sebastian by now.
Pinchos. So they do these little servings of food on tiny bits of bread. That's the way to eat. Fantastic place. Amazing place.
Thanks, Andy. Appreciate you joining us. Great to catch up with you.
Great to see you.
Yeah, likewise. Cheers, guys.
Good to see you, mate. Take care.
Andy May of BT Sport in England with us from San Sebastian, where he's covering the Women's Champions League, having been in Lisbon last week for the Men's Champions League. What a life. Andy getting to fly around Europe watching the game at the highest level. We've talked a lot about a lot of different things on the show so far today. Between now and the end of the show, I think we turn our attention to what is expected to happen in Major League Soccer the next few days. We don't know in terms of if games are definitely going to go ahead or what happens. But right now, Toronto FC, after the first couple of games against Vancouver Whitecaps, are looking pretty good as they head to what is now expected to be back-to-back games against Montreal. We saw the Whitecaps go to Montreal the other night, KJ, and the Impact actually, having not played for a month since they lost in the round of 16 tournament at MLS's back against Orlando, looked pretty good. Some decent performances from Lassi Lappalainen, from Safir Taider. I'm really interested to see if they can produce that now, having done it against the Whitecaps, if they can produce it against a much stronger TFC team.
Yeah, I think it was a really good performance, a controlled performance, as I said on TSN, and one that you could see Thierry was smiling a lot on the sidelines, and he hasn't had that lot going, much to smile about too much, because I think, as he's told us, that he has tried to get some kind of identity with the team, but they've had, the Champions League 2 games, then a break, then Orlando for a bit, then another month off and back. So, look, it was a little bit like jumping out of a small window from the first floor and landing on a very thick mattress. The fact that you have to play the Whitecaps, I have to say, but at the same time, it wasn't a massive problem for them because the Whitecaps have got problems of their own. But ultimately, Stevie, they passed all the tests. I thought tactically he got it right. We'll see if Taider's, see physically how he is, because he's obviously their best player. But they did well. There's a lot of relationships with centre backs look good. So I think they should be in better shape than they were when they played TFC in Orlando, for example.
Yeah, I think they'll be in better shape than that. I thought it was a good performance, KJ. I'm with you. I liked some of the things that they did. I thought it was pretty interesting, the way that they played in terms of their shape in possession and out of possession, which most teams have different formations, the way they press compared to the way that they possess. But I thought it was quite interesting the way that they used Lappalainen and Kyoto and wider positions, with Taider as a sort of false number 9 at times, isn't he? Allowed to float around the pitch, and then the onus on the opposite winger getting into the box and providing a focal point. The width was key, wasn't it, against the Whitecaps? He knew that he could, if he got wing backs as it was with Broguillard and Lappalainen predominantly high and wide, it would cause the Whitecaps some problems. And at times the Whitecaps had too many men in that back line with nobody to pick up. Nobody then was willing to go step out into the other area. And a quick word for me, maybe on the Whitecaps after their really tough 3-game road trip. That we said on air, didn't we, Luke, that it got a little bit better every game, but nowhere near good enough. I have to say they're miles away, guys. I was thinking more about it Tuesday night's game and assessing what we saw from them. And while it was decent possession at times, the attacking play is miles off. They're not getting any end product. They're not getting any shots. They're not getting any quality crosses. There's nothing coming from any of the play, and that would be a huge concern for me. I mean, you must get shots at goal. I think Thierry told us, KJ, didn't he? Yeah. If you don't shoot, you don't score. Talking about Taider's goal, desire. MLS is back when Taider had the deflected shot that went in that got them in the knockout stage. And, it's such a simple thing to say in football, but if you don't shoot, you don't score. And these guys are not even getting in any position to shoot and not even taking the opportunity. I think it's really alarming for them. But I'm excited for Friday, Luke. Good game, 2 good teams. Be a tougher challenge for the Impact, and interested to see if Thierry sticks with that kind of style or if he has a little adjustment in terms of different opposition and more quality from the opposition on Friday night.
And did you see enough, KJ, from the 2 games against the Whitecaps to suggest that this TFC team, we now know what they are going to be between now and the end of the season in terms of the quality that they're able to get to, Greg Vanney's best sort of way to play, personnel?
Yeah, I think there's a lot to like about them. I think obviously bigger tests to come, as we've mentioned, with the Whitecaps not being a significant test for them. But, the fact that I think that what Greg Vanney's worked on the most, and what I would imagine, I don't know this, but that he thinks about more than anything else, is the defensive structure to the team. As Greg has told us many times, it's a team that will always score goals. It's a team that will always create and generate problems for the opposition. But I think that if they're going to go to the elite level, they want to make sure that they can, shut teams down, score goals and think, we're going to win now. And I think they did that against the Whitecaps. And I think they need to take the next level. Last season, they only got 5 clean sheets. The year before that, they only got 4 clean sheets. That's nine clean sheets in 68 regular season games. They know that percentage isn't good enough. They know this year they already had 2 heading into those games. They've had 2 more now. That's 4 clean sheets already. I think that's really important. The relationship between Omar Gonzalez and Chris Mavinga. Richie Larea's got better defensively. Stevie, we always know that midfield looks a little bit better now, a bit more structure there as well. I thought Liam Fraser did a good job and almost played like a right back role out of possession to allow Arrow to get forward. So I think that defensive structure and that commitment from everybody defensively, right from the top, by the way, back, is vital for them to take the next step.
Yeah, I think when they play against better opposition, the key is can they be solid, can they defend while still trying to remain aggressive and dominant. I think they can sit back and they can, restrict space in behind Gonzalez, for example, and then I think they can look quite solid as a team. But can they be in the front foot and look solid? I think that's what Greg Vanney's thinking about. I think he wants to be dominant. He wants to be higher up so that they can then transition, win the ball back, go score goals pretty quickly. That to me is still a question mark. I'm worried about them against, the better sides in MLS, the Seattles, the LAFCs, the Atlantas. When they're coming out and they're leaving space in areas, I still think they can be vulnerable. So it's a big key for him. Can he get that team a little bit higher up and not look so vulnerable? In possession, I agree with you, they'll always score goals. It'll never look the same with Greg Vanney. I think he'll always tweak things. He likes to keep teams guessing. I do think that the Piatti exercise of being wide and sometimes inside is sort of interesting. And I think that he still has some issues with the midfield at certain times and what he wants to see from that triangle with Osorio coming from the left and inside. But they're one of the best sides. They're going to be there or thereabouts. They have top players. Keeping them fit and keeping them motivated and playing at the best of their abilities will be crucial if TFC are going to win MLS Cup.
We'll finish the show with the Benjamin Moore do-it-yourself play of the game, and it comes from the second half of the game against the Whitecaps last week. We've not gone with a goal this week. We also, Stevie, haven't gone with a great defensive play, but producer Kev is going to share the screen now with a play that not too many people would look to make. Just watch this coming here from Alejandro Pozuelo with a ball through to Patrick Mullins. This is our Benjamin Moore do-it-yourself play of the game. What about that?
It's sublime. It really is. We talk about Major League Soccer going to another level. This guy's making a difference every single game with the stuff that he's producing. And what I like about it, I don't know if we can go back again, or it's fine. But what I'll say about this is that, everybody now is focusing, Stevie, on the delivery of the ball and where it ends up with Pozuelo. And I understand why, but the way that he mixes up the pace of how hard he kicks the ball from the boot as well is also, I think, really interesting, because he knows how to just, obviously they link together, but he just knows where the ball's going to go. But he also knows when that ball needs to be at the certain speed to reach the teammate, if you know what I'm saying. Yeah. And this is an example of it. He knows where that ball's going to go, but so many other people would say, okay, and overkick it. So it's rolling past Patrick Mullins a little bit harder. But that is absolutely perfect. You couldn't ask for a better position there, much like the goal in Orlando when he put the ball across the ball into Akinola, that it actually, the player receives it not only at the right time, but not only in the right place, but at the right speed. Yeah. And that's the next thing I think that people could start seeing about the Pozuelo deliveries.
Yeah, and I really don't know how to describe that to people. It's just talent. It is touch. It's feel. It's repetition. It's just special. It's what makes Pozuelo really different for me. It's his outstanding quality, the weight and pace of passes that he plays. But the one thing I want to recognise about that little move there was that the way he drifts into space, and he never appears to look to see where Patrick Mullins is, but he certainly has. And the pace with which he makes a decision when he lifts his head up to select that pass, find the way to that pass, and put it right on Mullins' left boot is absolutely remarkable, guys. It is sublime. It is exceptional talent from an exceptional player who is a guy that can find anybody if he gets space and time between the lines. So TFC's game plan is to create that space and time for that one man. If they can do that more often than not, they'll win a bunch of games.
Shame Patrick Mullins couldn't finish that one, although he probably got a lot closer to it than TFC's previous number 13. The guy called
I was never in that position, was I? I think I'd have finished that, though, in fairness. It was a big chance for Patrick Mullins.
Yeah. He probably wasn't expecting that ball to come in like that from where it was at the time, but that's your do-it-yourself play of the game, brought to you by Benjamin Moore Pozuelo there. That was one of my favourite moments from the pitch this week. The other one was probably the outside of the right boot cross from Sefir Taider for the Kyoto goal. That was just delicious.
Great ball.
Yeah, gorgeous. That
was in the Montreal win against Vancouver. TFC set to come up against Montreal in the next few days as the MLS regular season continues. Enjoyed today's conversation. Some difficult subjects to talk about, but very important that we highlight these things and talk as best we can, KJ, from our perspective about the things that are going on in the world as well, and not just soccer.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Appreciate you guys so much, as colleagues, as friends, and, thanks for that. And, thanks for everybody for listening. And, again, just having those conversations is important. And as, just to reiterate, if those missed it from the first half an hour, what we talked about, just thank you to everybody for doing what's right, for softening your hearts and having the right, morals and values to guide the league forward to do what's right and to be there with people who are hurting and to listen and learn more.
And for anyone who wants to hear more from your chat, KJ, with Jeremy Abobasi, Mark Anthony Kay, Richie Larea a few weeks back, it's still there, I'm sure, on the TSN YouTube page.
It is, yeah.
A really enlightening conversation. And if you've got the time, I encourage you do try and listen to what these players have to say. We'll be back next week, same time with Footy Talks. For now, though, thanks for watching.
Thank you.
Thank you.